Hey everyone, welcome to Wellth Body Radio. I'm your host, Alicia Hamill, and I'm so glad you're here. This is our little part of the world where we get to have honest and expansive conversation about all things health and wellness. These conversations are geared towards making you rich within your mind, body, and spirit, which in turn will make your pockets rich, I promise, okay? But these are all conversations meant to empower you to regain that gut intuition and to move confidently through this messy world. Remember, this information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and not intended as medical advice. Okay, let's get started. Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Wellth Body Radio. I'm your host, Alicia Hamill, and I am so excited to share the next little bit together. So the last time we talked, I left off on the note, sorry if you're watching, I just had to bring my hands up to start talking, turn it on. So I started talking about how it took probably almost 5 extra years to overcome my eating disorder. My therapist had set me free. I was thriving, air quotes, and I still was having these big binging episodes and I just couldn't get over it. When I was surrounded with my roommate, Ash, he really helped me, really stayed disciplined and focused on what my message was and who I wanted to be. But there was just, when times got overwhelming, I just couldn't. I just gave up. We moved to Florida. Yay. Amazing. Absolutely love it there. BRB. But living in Florida, I just thought that if I changed my environment, if I lived and worked and breathed everything I stood for and wanted to be, where could I go wrong? I should be the happiest I should ever be, look how I want to look, live how I want to look. And that was not the case. I was still having the odd like needing to eat chocolate to feel relief. So no longer like binging. I really wasn't having any binging episodes. I probably say I haven't had a binging episode in like a year or so, but it was just still like, I need to detach. I need relief, comfort. So I was still like seeking chocolate or like saying like we should go get ice cream and like encouraging like food related activities to kind of like de-stress. So like I said, living in what I call paradise and not feeling fully recovered, I was like, what the fuck is going on? How am I like this? Why am I like this? And it got curious. And that's one of the things I'm really going to encourage you guys to do is to get curious. You have to ask yourself, why do I do things the way that I do? Okay? So next time you do something that is just like, oh, that was kind of like niche to me. Why do I do that? Or if something makes you feel uncomfortable, again, ask yourself like, okay, why did I have that reaction? Because everything we do, everything we feel is essentially an accumulation of past experiences we've had. And that's how they're like not projecting, but that's how the word is like reacting. There we go. Reacting to. Okay. So I'm in Florida. I'm getting really curious about myself. And I asked myself, do people really change? I thought I had to change my environment, change the people I'm around, and I will change. And now I've done all that. I've moved across country and I'm asking myself like, why am I not changed? Do people really change? And I was like, hey, maybe this is it. Maybe this is as far as I get in my journey. This is like the peak of how I'm going to live for the rest of my life. And you can kind of see there's a thread in my life of me always asking like, is this enough? Is this where this ends? And I always find out, no, there's always more if you want more and you ask for more. So go out and get it. Your life is definitely more expansive than you give yourself credit for. But I digress again. So people really change. So I kept asking myself that. I kept asking Ash that, and we were going on walks a lot, and he was like, well, you have to shift your identity. And I was like, what the fuck is identity? Like, I have an identity. I'm Alicia. I'm a nutrition coach. Like, that's me. You know, I've had an eating disorder. You know, I have parents that live in Canada. Like, it's just kind of like, that's like, what else do you want from me? But when I would say I'm a nutrition coach, my voice would like, I'm a nutrition coach. Like, it was very shy, very meek. I didn't really believe it with conviction. But when I said I had an eating disorder, it was so powerful. It was so like, yeah, duh, like, still do. Like, you know what I mean? Even though I wasn't acting that way, I still was acting that way, if that makes any sense. So there was another incident that kind of together with these chats that I was having with Ash, like really challenging him like, you know, being like, no, this is my opinion, and not really budging on it. And then when like I said, this other episode that came up, this other thing that happened, we went to a Halloween party. I dressed up like a devil, feeling super cute, looked really nice. And we got there, I was sober, and there was one of the grounds workers, his name's Sean, great guy. He brought it to me later on that he had noticed me at the party and that my persona on social media was very different than who I was in person. And he said that on social media, I was just like, you know, act like you don't care, like be yourself, love yourself, like do good things, yada, yada, yada. And then at this party, I was like a complete wallflower. I was looking over my shoulder constantly of like who was looking at me, what was happening. I was watching other girls, like how they were dressed, what's going on, like are they laughing, who are they talking with? Like I was so self-conscious. So when he told me this, I was like, okay, obviously like who I think I am is not lining up with like who people are seeing me as. What is going on? And him and I back and forth had more conversations, and it kind of got me to talk about how I kind of keep myself at this specific level of like potential so that people always pay attention to me, so that I don't ever stop hearing the external validation, the words of affirmation, my love language, that you are enough. Like, Alicia, you can do so much. Alicia, you're doing so good. Like, wow, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of keeping in the spotlight, like of just like mediocrity, like just a little bit more than everybody else, but not enough to scare myself and fail, but just like enough that people are like, you have lots of potential. Go for it. Wow, you're amazing. And then I could just stay here and like tread at the line. So when he brought that up, I was like, damn, that is an interesting insight into who I am and who I believe I am and who I project myself as in person and then versus social media. So I'd always refer to myself as a nutrition coach with a real life experience. And now I kind of don't do that anymore. So once I figured out that me saying that I was recovered from an eating disorder, like trying to leverage that as like relatability to potential clients was really doing me a disservice. So I just like decided that day, then and there, that like I don't identify with the eating disorder anymore. I just gave it away, set it free, opened my hands and was like, hey, God, fill it up with something else because I don't want to hold on to that shit anymore. And that was back in the end of November when this kind of dialogue started happening. And then beginning of December, like I let that go. And I've been a changed human ever since. And it was so easy to let that go because previously, like I've done a lot of internal work. I've done a lot of journaling. I know myself pretty much in and out. I know my body really well. I know when things aren't sitting right emotionally and physically. I know who I want in my life. I know who I click with, who I don't. Like I am very intuitive with who I am because I've spent a lot of years and a lot of money with a therapist to make myself a better person. And I'm overly grateful for that experience. So when I realized that all I needed to do was stop identifying with having an eating disorder and like set it free, my gosh, going to restaurants, I could just order whatever I wanted. Like there was no shame. There was no second guessing myself. When I go to restaurants, I'm like, is there seed oils in this? What is this cooked in? Does it come with dressing? Is it battered? Is it fried? And like, I'm annoying. I'm so proud of myself rather than being like annoyed that I would like ever ask those questions, or I don't want to like disservice or like not disservice, inconvene. There we go. Inconvene someone else. I'm just like, this is who I am. This is what I want in my life. I don't want to eat this. I do want to eat that. Like I'm just ordering food. Like this is your job to take my order. As shitty as that sounds, that's kind of the reality of it. And being a waitress for the last like 10, 12 years, like I can say that, okay? But it was just so easy to change my identity. And now that I've changed my identity, like, it's crazy the stuff that has been manifesting and coming to me. Like, people are like asking me questions. People are reaching out to me more about nutrition, and like they're seeing like how stubborn I am with certain things and like my conviction behind it, that they actually believe me. And like the truth that I hold is like relevant. Like it's not like this false like smoke and mirrors that I was doing before. So how do you change your identity? First of all, you have to figure out what your identity is. And that could be just writing down everything you know about yourself, physical, mental, like write it all down. Like if somebody were to read this piece of paper, they would know it's you without any name, right? They'd be like, oh yeah, that's Alicia, duh. Okay, so start with that. That's super, super, super easy exercise. The other thing you could do is to reach out to family members or friends and be like, hey, 5 things, how would you describe me? That is going to give you some pretty good insight, especially the things that like double up or triple up. You'll be like, okay, that's obviously really, really me. And then after that, I would say write down like who you think you are, or like who you thought you were, or who you want to be, as like a past, present, future kind of self exercise. And then see where things line up and where things don't line up. So like your past self, like does some of that show up in your future self and you don't want it to continue into your, like, no, did I say that right? Your past self, where does it show up in your present self, and you don't want it to show up in your future self? Like where can you put in roadblocks to change the trajectory? I have such a hard time with that word, of your life, right? Of your identity. And then once you figure out like who you were, who you are now because of that were, and then like who you are going to be going forward, who like your ideal self would be, it becomes much more clear. And then from there, you can be like, okay, my ideal self acts like this, has this, beliefs. How do I get from point A to point B? And that might be going for walks in the morning. It might be listening to certain podcasts. It might be changing the way you eat, the friend group that you have. It might even be like switching from a Mac computer to an Apple computer. It's just something, just like, if that's how your future self is going to act, like that's how you kind of have to start to integrate into your present day, because you're not just going to end up somebody else by accident. Who you are now, the actions that you commit, the things that you do are already like creating that reality, that future self. So if your present on paper doesn't line up with your future self, you need to fix from point A to point B. Well, I guess you need to make it point A to point B, because it's not. It's like point A to like point I right now, and it just she don't make sense. She don't make sense on paper, and we need to make it make sense. Okay, so that's what I would start doing. I think that would be super helpful. And then, like I said, just practicing that identity shift and like catching yourself when you have moments in your head that are like, oh, but we don't do that. And it's like, okay, but why? Why don't we do that? Is it because I actually don't want to? Or is it because I've been conditioned myself not to want to? Or when it's like, oh, I can't wear that, it's gross, like on my body. It's like, okay, but why? Why do you feel gross on your body? It's because like you ate some chips last night and like, now you're projecting that you're fat, even though like nothing's really changed between, the chips, your body then and now, but you think you're not worthy enough. Maybe it's the chips that were in front of the Netflix that was the issue, because you didn't get the work you needed to get done, and now you feel like a piece of shit. Okay, like there's like little things where you have to catch yourself and then find the breadcrumbs that you've left to see what the root cause of it all is. And then again, it's like, okay, it was the Netflix. It was the 6 hours I spent on the couch that actually upset me. How do I change that? Okay, 6 hours is a pretty good chunk of time that you should be able to switch up. But do you see what I'm saying? How like nothing is set in stone, but you just have to become more self-aware, so that you can start to change these little bits about yourself. And that is just not going to happen because you just want it to. You have to actively change. Okay, and I think on that note, that's where I'm gonna kind of leave this. So going forward, we are changing our identity, because that's going to help us align better with our goals, with who we want to show up in the world as, and to keep us living our most authentic, happiest life. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Don't forget to check it out on YouTube if you want to see me talk with my hands. Hello, YouTube, if you can see me talking with my hands. And then also don't hesitate to reach out to me over social media and let me know how this podcast made you feel. If you need help with anything, if I need to clarify anything, who knows how this ramble actually went. I think it went great, but listening back might be a whole different story. And then other than that, don't forget to show up in the world, okay? Show up a little bit more curious, a little bit more intentional, and a lot more loving. All right, bye.